Welcome to the Art of Hitting channel. Today we have another behind the scenes in the dugout. Yes, sir. We got Audie Hollis from the Hollis Appraisal Team. We got him behind the scenes with a little clip about his long run, winning 7 out of 8 Florida half-century state championships, and why he lost in 2009.
Let's get on to this run you had in the Florida half-century after you got together with Ed and Rose. How did by the way, what did you think when you first experienced the how do I want to put this, the Ed Rose personality?
Oh, I'll tell you what. Well, there's two things I say. There's two people I know when they're in the ballpark when I pull up in the parking lot, and that's Ed Rose and Gary Deaton.
Hey, Gary, we're on the same boat, huh?
But here's the thing. What people don't probably remember, Ed, and I do. You used to hit 2 home runs a game at the age of 56 in the 50s. That was your average, was 2 home runs a game, which is something I wanted to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
And so I actually pulled some of the old records from back in those days, and I averaged 1 point every 3.67 at bats. I hit a home run, which was nowhere near as good as what you were doing. So you were a legend back then. And in my mind, you and Davey Reed were the 2 best hitters I'd ever seen in senior ball. You told me there was a guy named Don Clatterball that was
he's the dog, Big Donnie.
And of course, I couldn't believe, well, if anybody can hit better than these 2, I got to see him. So eventually I met Don and became friends with Don and his wife, and he was a fantastic hitter. But you and Davey Reed were the top 3. Now, granted, I didn't know about the California boys or the Ohio boys, but for the South.
Yeah, we speak from the East Coast perspective. There's a lot of guys, well, I say a lot. There's not a lot of guys better than Don and Dave. Those 2 guys. And Dave became the home run hitter because of the switch to overlap grip, and he'll tell you that. Don, he's been a great player since day one.
Oh, yeah, and both of them left-handed. Just amazing guys.
Don, well, the other part of that, both of those guys are workaholics.
Yeah.
As far as I could call Don during the winter. Him and I, since the 50s, have been good friends. We played on that 50s team. Don't you find that when you play on a winning team, like all the Hollis boys that we played on that big run, we're all pretty much still tight. I mean,
absolutely.
What do you think that is? That
we
camaraderie. And Dan, you haven't been on. You've been on some teams in Canada that like that too, right?
Yeah.
So, isn't there just like a special bond? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a commonality of what you've accomplished, And it's interesting. Granted, this is just softball, and it's a limited number of people you're playing against, but the feel for it, the excitement for it, really brings you together as people, and you end up becoming friends for life because of what you've experienced and things like that. And so, it's been, I tell you, softball has been a real eye-opener to me. I mean, I've played in a number of countries now. I've been in 16 states playing tournaments. I've been to Hawaii 5 times, Dominican 5 times, played in charity tournaments all over the country, and met some super people. And the interesting thing is, the commonality that I see is that when you're playing your age group, those people grew up in the same time era that you did. They know the same thing, the same experiences, have the same age children, and now the same age grandchildren. And so, there's a lot of, when we go to a national tournament, I mean, it's like a reunion as opposed to being super competitive. So we'll be competitive on the field. There'll be some hard feelings occasionally, but afterwards, I mean, you see them in the restaurants and you see them everywhere, and your friends.
Well, getting back to that run, tell me how you do. And like I wasn't there, I was there, and I could probably answer this too. But I want to hear your answer. How in the world did you go 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, and 13? What was the one we missed? 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
There's one of them we missed.
There's one we missed. I must have wrote down something wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Was it 8 in a row or 7 in a row?
No, it was 7 and 8 years. Yeah.
7 and 8 years. So one of them. 2009. 2009 was the one that they didn't let us play.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, that was interesting because I got a call from the president of the association, and he basically said, "Hey, we're not able to put together a state tournament this year, so we're not going to have it." Well, that's fine. All right, we won't come. I get it. And So I didn't even think about it, until later I heard, they did have a state tournament. There were 2 teams in the top bracket, and one team that happened to be the president of the association's team won. So they became state champions, and they were an excellent team. But to be honest with you, I look at things a little differently. And I still have a problem with the Florida Half Century from this standpoint. When I joined the Florida Half Century and I paid my money to be a member, I am a member. And then for you to legislate that I have to play so many games as a team and so many games as a player to be in the state tournament, then I think that's wrong. Because if I'm a member, I should be allowed to play in whatever tournament I want to play in, right? And so what happened there, we did that great run. My guys, since we're out of Northeast Florida, the Jacksonville area, every tournament we have to go spend 2 nights in a motel. Well, if you're on travel teams, you're also going once or twice a month to travel. And pretty soon your wives or girlfriends are like, dude, you're out of town all the time, you're spending all this money on hotels. So then the Florida Half Century, when you're looking at national tournaments, is a step below. Now, granted, Florida Half Century hierarchy doesn't believe that, but we as players believe that. So we believe a national tournament is more important than a half century monthly. So the end result was, I told my guys, hey, come to what tournaments you can come to, but you have to come to the state tournament. So when we would come to the state tournament, we'd be fully loaded. We hardly ever won a monthly during the regular part of the year because we were going half loaded every time, all right? And then, so they legislated that the team itself had to go to 6 tournaments.
6.
And the player had to go to and participate in at least 4.
What's it down to now, Dan? Is it down to like 3 or 4?
Yeah, I think it's 4,
4.
but I'm guessing.
Yeah. And I tried to explain to these guys, I was like, look, if you force me to bring my full team to every tournament, y'all won't win nothing.
Right.
So you should be glad we don't show up. That makes, but here's what would happen. Just to be honest with you, I mean, the LSD players, I'm great friends with all those guys, and they're wonderful players and people. And they were the best team during the year, but when my guys were there at the state, they were second fiddle, right? And their coach couldn't handle that, and so that's why that got instituted. And so the flip side of it is, I was telling Dad that since we every tournament had to travel, I did some research and found out where the geographic center of the state is, which is just a little bit northwest of Orlando, by the way. And I also found out where the geographic center of the population of the state is, which is a little bit south of Lakeland. So I'm like, go to a meeting and I'm like, guys, when y'all go in Fort Myers and Naples 2 times a year to appease somebody, we're not coming down there. We're not making that 7-hour trip. So that's 2 tournaments we can't go to. So keep them in the center part of the state where everybody can go, and the teams in Tampa, St. Petersburg, Orlando, they never have to pay for motels. They never have to travel. They can go sleep at their house, right, and show up. So they have an advantage, and they come more fully loaded than any team that's coming from Naples or Fort Myers or Jacksonville or Pensacola.
I'm sure that's a reality.
So they're like, well, no, we're going to do it this way and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, all right, well, then I want a tournament in Jacksonville. And which was a big deal then. So they finally agreed to that. So the following year we had a tournament in Jacksonville, which
I can't remember the last time I played in Jacksonville in the half century.
Well, you only played one time.
Maybe that's why.
And 28 teams showed up, 28 out of 85. Yeah. And so I'm talking to the guys that, that I played all the time every month. And I'm like, why didn't y'all show up? Well, we'd had to pay motels. And we'd had to travel. And I'm like,
that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
Every time?
Yeah, every month. And so even today, the Hollis 60 team, we're judicious on which tournaments we can go to because we got to look at, who we're going with and who's not going to be there because they're playing in national tournaments. And so that makes your team weak during the year, but you have to get your 4 in and your 6 in.
Okay, so let's get off Florida Half Century. Get on the
Well, I hope you enjoyed that little segment from behind the scenes in the dugout. Audie's full interview will be posted sometime in either November or late October. Look for it on Spotify. And please don't forget to hit subscribe. That red button below. It's free. Yes, sir, free. Hit subscribe.